All right. Hello, everybody. We're live on Facebook, Zoom, and also on Twitter. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo, and this is Baseball Outside the Box. Announcement. We apologize. My fault. Some technical issues. I could not get Fred Clare on, the GM. We're going to reschedule GM of the Dodgers. That is definitely a super show. But we will reschedule for next week. We'll let you know about it. And again, I appreciate your patience and apologies from myself. And on with us today also, who was a good friend of Fred Clare's, and everybody knows him, Reggie Smith, former Dodgers outfielder. He is willing to take, what we're going to do is he's stepping in and just taking some questions, talk anything about the game. So I think this is going to be great. Reggie's been on the show before, one of the greatest hitting guys, greatest coaches, unbelievable individual. Love this guy to the earth, man. He's fantastic. So let me just welcome Reggie for taking in for Fred Clare's spot right now. How you doing, Reggie?
I'm good this morning. How are you? And certainly happy to pinch it for Fred.
Yeah, you know what? One time I actually got a chance at the Oklahoma High School Coaches Hall of Baseball Convention. I was sitting there, and I was fairly young, and I'm sitting there, and I'm the next speaker on, and I'm waiting for the first speaker to finish, and it's about 30 seconds to go, and the guy taps me on the shoulder. He says, "Hey, Pete, we got a problem." I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He goes, "Well, Ferguson Jenkins can't make it. He's the next speaker. He got stuck somewhere. And we need you to pinch hit for him." So I can say, you know, I pinch hit for Fergie Jenkins one time. I was scared to death, man, because all these guys were waiting for, you know, Ferguson Jenkins, and they get some guy they never heard of before in their life. So, but go ahead. Hey, Reggie, but again, thank you, man. Appreciate you doing this.
Sure.
Hey, let's do this real quick. You know, this I think would be a great way to start. And guys, you can unhook your mics. Ask Reggie anything about the game you want. I think it's going to be open game for this next 30 minutes. But at least, Reggie, tell us about Fred Clare, because you played for him, and I think that'd be a good start.
Fred, good friend. You know, it was a great general manager and a great boss to work for when I was with the Dodgers. And certainly the information that he would have been able to contribute to this conversation today, I definitely fall short from that standpoint, but love Fred to death. He's a great man. And
what do you think, Reggie? What do you think made him successful? Why? I mean, you're talking about. I was looking like 87 and 98, 11 years as a GM. You know, World Series, obviously. He even talked about the players. What do you think made him that successful?
Well, one of the things that I believe that made the whole Dodger organization at that time, and I'm sure Guy Conte, who's on here with me, can attest to that, was their thoroughness, their the attention they paid to detail, and the fact that they went out and hired good people, good knowledgeable people, and let us do our job. One of the things that I do remember I'm talking about was odds, and along with Charlie Blaney. This says you organize, you delegate, and you supervise. What they mean by organizing, you go out and get the people that know the things that are experts in the areas of each one of the disciplines that it takes to build an organization. Then you delegate those people to do those jobs. They have an expectation of you being able to do the job because you have some autonomy to bring in the information and provide the information that you have to ensure it with the players. And then they just sit back and supervise that. And with those expectations and everything, as well as treating the workers and players as family, is what made the organization successful. And Fred was very good at being able to do that and paying attention to all of the little small details, the things that needed to be done. I remember him saying it as well. We were riding to a golf tournament with Walter O'Malley, and remember Walter asking me long time ago, how come I wasn't afraid of him? And I told him at the time, no, you're just a man, and you put on your pants one leg at a time like any other man. And when you die, they're going to stick your butt to the ground and you'll stink. And he started laughing at that. And that being the case, I asked the question at that time, why do you do the things you do the way that you do them? And he said to me, if I can take away all of the little things that the players and the coaches could complain about, that and take care of those things, then I have every right to expect us not to just compete, we have to win. And that was what permeated throughout the whole organization. And Fred, having been in a reporter in media before that, he knew how to communicate those things, and that's what it's all about, communication.
That was interesting. I was reading 1969. He had, first of all, he had his journalism degree from San Jose State. And then in 1969, he covered spring training, and somebody got fired, and he went to him and said, I'd love to be an executive with the club. And that year they hired him as an executive. And that's incredible. But you always hear about the Dodger way. I think what you're talking about is the Dodger way in a lot of ways. And that you've been in development of the game so much. This is going to be my question. Then I hope people on Facebook and people on Zoom and Twitter will ask their questions right away. My question is, being in the development game, in those days, there was a system. Is nowadays system similar? And what changes do you think we've made, in the systems now when it comes to development from the Dodger way?
The system that was put in was one that had been developed over many years, where you had scouts that had been able to evaluate talent, and then you had coaches that could develop that talent. Today, one of the big differences is I think there's been a shortcut taken because we're using technology more to do those evaluations, so that human element is being taken out of it. And the thing that you have to be careful about in not being able to wed and marriage the two, from the intuitive and instinctive part of evaluation versus that of just a pure analytical and data-driven information. You have to be able to marry those, because you have to remember that what data is something that's happened in the past. And it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen in the future with it, although it gives you some indicators. It doesn't tell you when a player is going to go into a hot streak. It doesn't tell you how long he's going to be in that hot streak. And all of these things that are starting to happen in the game today, you're seeing less of a gut instinct to tell you if a player could play versus just strictly analytical. Because some organizations have completely done away with their scouting systems, and they go on video. And I think that that has caused shortcuts to be taken in some instances, and I don't feel that the game is the same from that standpoint. That the spontaneity, that intuitiveness that you've been used to seeing is not there. It's coming back. There's some organization that are bringing it back, and that's all you can hope for. And those are the biggest differences I see right now.
And Reggie, you deal a lot with the youth players nowadays, with youth coaches, with travel teams. What do you think about the development? What areas are we going really well in, and what areas are we dangerously going into?
Well, with the analytics and with the proliferation of a lot of the travel programs that, and that's both good and bad from the standpoint of getting more kids to play. But unfortunately, along with that, the level and competence of the instruction that a lot of kids are receiving is waning. And there are a lot of coaches, and especially with the technical or technology that's available, oftentimes are left to go on their own understanding of what the information is providing them. So that's a little dangerous from that standpoint, because it risks injury. And this is what you're saying, especially with the number of games that you see a lot of young kids playing. When I see 7 and 8-year-olds playing 80 and 90 games a year, that's a little dangerous, because one of the things that we did do and did pay attention to when I was with the Dodgers, having the great trainers and orthopedists, Curlin and Job, and the therapists that we had, a lot of attention was paid to those things from a scientific standpoint as to the overall development of players as it related to more of a prophylactic sense of injury prevention. And one of the things in an early study that I found that about throwing what was happening with the arms of young players, that the coupled with poor mechanics and overuse. I remember Dr. Job once saying that he was seeing 17 and 18-year-old kids that they were doing surgeries on that had the scar tissue and injury of a 35-year-old veteran major league player. So the number of games, the overuse in youth of the baseball related activities, and the fact that there are just, let's say, some coaches, God bless them, they're out there giving their time, which is precious. They lack some of the, I think, basic fundamental of sound information that the kids should be using. And a lot of that, I personally feel, if they were just left to be natural and just play, that development would happen just as fast.
Makes sense, absolutely. Go ahead. Is it? I'm sorry.
That's our Fred there.
Fred, yeah. Oh, Fred, how are you? I didn't even see you come in. Would you sneak in on us?
Well, look, there's one thing I learned a long time ago. When Reggie speaks, just listen. Don't be talking. The great Peter Drucker once said, I never learned anything when I was talking. So one of the things that you need to be successful is a good listener. And great to see Reggie there, and great to see Guy Conte. How are you, Guy?
Good, Fred. Good to see you.
So, Peter, this deal of getting connected, it's like making a deal. Just because you get a no and just because you don't connect doesn't mean you don't keep trying, as Reggie Wells knows.
That's why we know you've been so successful. First of all, let me thank you for joining us, and also for the very first time meeting you in person. And I just want to tell everybody in the U.S. and around the world, we're back with Fred Claire. I want to thank Reggie Smith for jumping in, but we're going to have everybody jump in, ask questions. I just want to start it off with this, Fred, and I want everybody to know this. From my standpoint, I mean, when I was in the 80s, when we ran a pilot program for USA Baseball with Dick Case, we had the 15, 16-year-old program. We're trying to show that we could run a program at the national team level at that age. I sent a letter to you because we were on our way to Japan to play in the World Games. And, you didn't know me from Adam. The letter stated, Mr. Clark, we'd love to stop by, practice on Dodger Stadium, and then, the next day we're taking off for Japan for the games. And I thought, okay, well, let's see what happens, and nothing's really going to come about it. Next thing you know, you're right back. Next thing you know, we're taking batting practice in Dodger Stadium. Everything is laid out for us, just like it would be for the Major League club. People met us in the front of the stadium, and I mean, to me, that was one of the greatest highlights of my life, because I just thought, wow, Fred Clare, the GM of the Dodgers, you know, a Dodger GM from 87 and 98, a guy who started off in journalism, who in 69, then, you know, from what I understand, and we're going to talk about this, in 69, somebody got fired when you were in spring training, covering spring training. Somebody got fired, and you said you'd like to be an executive with the Dodgers, and you got hired that year. So I just wanted to thank you publicly for what you've done for the game, not only in the U.S., but also in the world. So thank you again, Mr. Clare.
You bet, Peter. And it's, as Reggie and I know, it's Fred, but it's great memories, and the association with so many great people through the years, because that's what it's all about. And I did get my chance in 1969, and it came about, and I'll be brief, in a somewhat brief way, because there was an opening due to a firing. And I wrote a letter to Red Patterson. We'd gone on the road. I was traveling with the team, covering the team, and said that I would have an interest if they were considering people. And I met with Red when the team got back to San Diego, and Red said that they had made a decision, and that they appreciated my interest, and they were going to hire someone else. And I said, no problem, that's fine. That person, Don Anderson, the late Don Anderson, wonderful man from USC, then turned down the job. And so they came back to me and said, Fred, the job is yours. And I said, you know, I don't really know that I'm interested. And they were somewhat shocked. And there was no animosity. I simply said that, you know, I've thought about it too. And so, you know, it may not be that I am the right guy, but ultimately we reached an accord, and that started my career with the Dodgers in 1969.
Incredible. You know, and I want to start with this because, you know, you wrote the book, Extra Innings, Fred Clare's Journey of Hope and Finding a World Championship. Tell us about the book, why you wrote it, and how it can help individuals, whether they're in the game, trying to, you know, get into the game, grow into the game, or even if they're not in the game.
Well, the book, and I'm not, it gives me a chance to plug it. And Reggie, one is coming your way. The book is written by Tim Madigan, and the book is not about Fred Clare per se. The book is about the City of Hope, and the book is about fighting cancer, and the book is about a support system, because all of us, everyone here, and all of us who spent time in the sun know the dangers of the sun. And my journey started 5 years ago when I had a little spot in my lip, had the Mohs procedure. I bet everybody on this call has had the Mohs procedure at one time or another. And a very well-known Mohs doctor said that, Fred, it is clear, the margins are clear, you have no problem. And as it turned out, the margin wasn't clear. The cancer came back, as Reggie Wells knows, in my advanced from my lip a year and a half later into my jawbone. And so they had to take the cancer, cut my throat, take the cancer out of my jawbone, hollow out the jawbone. And that sent me through 33 radiations, 7 chemos.
Wow.
And then the cancer came back into my neck at the beginning of 2017. So my journey with City of Hope started. I looked around, I saw the great work they were doing, wanted to support them. We had 2 celebrity golf tournaments. Reggie, bless his heart, was very much involved. We raised $500,000 for the City of Hope. And then last July, with all the treatment, my jawbone had disintegrated. So on July 31 of last year, not quite 1 year ago, they did an operation, 3 doctors, 8 hours. They took the fibula bone from my left leg and put it in my jawbone.
Wow.
So that is the journey. But I've seen, when you go in City of Hope and you see the patient, there's a team there. As a patient, you get a wristband. You're part of a team. And this may sound like an overreach. It almost became my place, like walking into Dodger Stadium. I was never alone. I was part of something that was so far bigger than myself. And so that's why I wrote the book, or I didn't write it, Tim Madigan wrote it. But our journey is part of that. And the story of other people, it's very definitely a story that weaves baseball and cancer. And I see Guy, and I know that my friend Phil Regan has bought a few books to distribute. I think one of them has been directed to Guy, and I don't know whether Guy's had a chance to read it, but I think the book will stand on its own merits. It's the story from a baseball standpoint of my friendship with Kevin Towers, who fought a much bigger opponent than I did. And the last year of Kevin's life, as we kind of battled this together. And the story of a high school baseball coach, Tom Quinley, who lost his life to cancer. So something we're all familiar with. It's not, I'm not an unusual story. I just had a bit of a platform to be able to call attention to the City of Hope and the work that they do.
Fred, you know, incredible story, because I love the part about the teamwork and the team that you had by your side. You know, without dealing with it before, on a mental issue, you still had to go home. You still had to go, you know, you're by yourself or with your wife, or, you know, how do you deal with that mentally? How does somebody that is going through this deal with it mentally? Because, man, that's got to be scarier than anything else in the world.
Well, I think one of the things, and I think everyone on this call, or people who've been involved in baseball, and it's and you don't have to be involved in sports to be a competitor. But baseball teaches us great lessons. And when you're involved in competition, as we all know, when you're involved in the daily battle and competition of the game, there's something that you build or that you have within you. And it's not something that you can transplant, but it's something you want to try to encourage others. Don't give up. I don't care how many games we're behind. I don't care what the score is in an individual game. I mean, you've got to compete, and you better be competing for your life. And so that was part of I was blessed with all that we went through. I say we, Cheryl, my wife, myself, my family. I always had the feeling that I was part of a great team, and that I knew that I was going to do my best to compete as hard as I could to help myself and help others. And I think that's been a big part of why I've been able to stay positive, because as Reggie knows, and Guy and others, that we're all competitive people, and you have to use that competitive spirit.
Absolutely. You know, and that leads into, I want to kind of go into the Dodgers. And because I was talking to Reggie, and I asked Reggie about, you know, I've always heard and seen when I was younger, the Dodger way. There was a certain culture that you guys built with the Dodgers. Everybody talks about culture. But I certainly like to know what you thought the key ingredients were in that culture, what the Dodgers had built to make them successful. I know when you came on board, you actually were successful right away, because I believe you had signed some free agents too. You made deals. But as far as the culture of the organization, from the grassroots level all the way up.
Well, again, as I'll reference Reggie and Guy, because they know firsthand and they know as well as I did. I once asked the late Bill Schweppe, our farm director, wonderful man with the Dodgers going back to Branch Rickey. I said, Bill, what do you think it is with the Dodgers? What is it that you think is part of the key part of this? And he said, Fred, one of the is continuity. We had, and this is a reflection of the ownership of the O'Malley family. We had a continuity, and we had a togetherness in bringing all of the parts together, from the major leagues to the player development, to the scouting, to the medical, to every part. And we would have our disagreements. We would have many disagreements or in evaluations and what it is that we should do and what it is that we can do better. But I always had the sense that when we came out of that meeting, whether it was an organizational meeting or whether it was a meeting that I was having with Tommy or Billy Russell and the coaches, we were one. We were together. We were Dodgers. And that, as much as anything, that collective spirit, and you can't have this without great leadership at the very top. And again, to Walter and Peter O'Malley, and the philosophy that they had of giving responsibility. They gave responsibility to me. I gave responsibility to Tommy and to Reggie and the other coaches. And we let them do, enable them to do the things that they had the ability to do and they had the expertise to do. And I think that was as much as anything. It sounds trite, but I think as much as anything, it was a spirit of teamwork in the Dodgers, in the management, and within the players.
Sorry about that. I just muted somebody. Just make sure your mics are mute, please, just because it picks up background. Fred, you know, nowadays, and folks, remember, you could ask questions, so jump in. Don't be shy. But you know, I'm curious to find out, you know, as you follow the game, you know, culture, the times change a little bit, I guess. You know, you're seeing guys wear different socks. You're seeing guys celebrate. You're seeing guys, you know, just things are different a little bit than they used to be when they built culture. Certain things are consistent, but some things are changing. What do you see of some of the changes possibly that are pretty good and some of them maybe that, you know, are not?
Well, you know that when I've been asked about the game at different times, and it remains true today, that the thing that surprisingly, not surprisingly, but the thing that has changed the least is the players themselves and the young players wanting to be as good as they can be. And again, Reggie knows this firsthand from dealing with young players on a daily basis. The love of the game, the joy of the game, and wanting to advance and wanting to learn. All of the elements around the financial part, the media, all the other elements have changed dramatically. But the player and the wonder of the game and the talent that it requires, those are the things that in my mind have remained consistent. And that's the best part of the game, because we still have talent being developed, and we still have the wonderful talent that it takes to play the game at the major league level.
You know, nowadays, one of the things I think everybody's hoping for is baseball coming back. You know, it's at the grassroots level. We're starting to see games in different states, young kids playing, coaches out there. Also around the world, you're seeing more and more. So hopefully things will pick up. But we're also seeing, obviously, a labor dispute, you know, in Major League Baseball. And I know that I thought you said something very interesting in an article just recently. And I thought it was interesting because you said during this labor dispute, if you were involved, one of the first things, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously, but one of the first things that you would talk about before compensation would be the health and safety of the players before anything else. Kind of, I mean, I don't know if I gave it justice, so go ahead and tell us about it.
In the time that we're in, and in this negotiation, if I had been in management, the things that I would have said to the Players Association is, look, let's get one thing clear. We need to agree upon the safety of the players and the others involved in the game. I mean, and everyone, from the players to the clubbies to everyone, everyone involved in the game. because in the pandemic that we still face, is that safety has to be the number one issue. And once we're comfortable that and in agreement that we can take the precautions we need, and people are comfortable with what's being done to restart the game, then we can talk about the financial part. Because baseball, we don't know what's going to develop here. It's literally, I won't say impossible, but it's hard for me to imagine that ownership, that management, and the Players Association can't get together at this time to bring our game back. And those of us who went through the loss of the World Series in 1994, you can never regain that. You have lost that forever. And baseball really doesn't want to suffer those consequences. So I want to see, there's every reason for the game to come back once the health concerns, and it sounds like all the steps have been taken. It's too important to lose our game at such a critical time when not only the fans, when the country, when all of us need the game.
Absolutely. Especially like you said, I think you said it so well, during these times, we really need this with everything that's been going on. And one of the things, I'm pretty confident. I just feel comfortable and confident that I think Major League Baseball, the Players Association, I think they'll work this out. I know they've got to work pretty fast here because the time is running out. But what happens if baseball is not played this year? Now, I know the fans are fantastic. They've always come back, supported the game. But what do you think the repercussions of all this will be if baseball doesn't come back?
Well, think of it this way, Peter. We're now, 25 years removed from the loss of the World Series and the start of the 95 with, quote, the replacement players. That still has left a mark on the game. And again, there's no reason for this. Baseball has become a $10 billion sport. We need, the words of the great Walter O'Malley. I can remember being with Mr. O'Malley after Sandy had retired a number of years, and he said, a question was asked by the media, what would Sandy make today? And Walter looked at the reporter and he said, very important, he would be my partner. Management, players is one. This is one game. And we need to form a partnership and continue it, because the other part of this is that if the terrible consequence of not playing, the going then into 2021 and the overall agreement expiring at the end of 21, it's going to be very, very damaging to the game. I don't even want to, I hate to think about it.
Sure.
Don't even think about it, because I do think that common sense and financial sense will prevail, and we will be back on the field. I totally believe that.
Yeah, I think that's the way to think. Think positive, and positive things will happen. I know some of the coaches are interested in this, guys and gals, and being a general manager, the behind the scenes. I know Todd Howery asked about the behind the scenes, the trades. He was particularly asking about the Mike Piazza trade, what went on there. And I'm also want to add on top of that, when you're making a trade, what are the steps and to keep everybody involved, interest, to understand it, because sometimes, player may hear it through the media. That might not be the best way. How did you deal with that to make sure that you treated people fairly so they all understood where they stood when a trade came up?
Well, I think the best way to deal with it is transparency. And I remember after Dodger days, I had a call from Scott Boras, and we'd had a number of negotiations. And he said, Freddie said, would you have lunch with me? And I said, sure. I was curious. I said, what do you have in mind? He said, Freddie said, when you were the general manager, what you said to the press and what you said to the players and what you said to the other team, there never seemed to be a lot of controversy or turmoil that was involved in that. And I said, well, Scott, it's a very simple formula. Tell them all the same thing and tell them the truth. And with that, you will not have problems. And I think that is the main ingredient, to be transparent. And I think it's critically important because you know you have to realize that you're dealing with the lives and the careers of others. And I think as far as whether we were successful as I hope to be is always in the judgment of the players who were there at the time or the others who were there at the time. But that was the main thing. I just tried to be very open and honest with the players and with the general managers and with the people that I dealt with. I didn't think that we were any smarter than anybody else, but I think that if we worked hard and worked to the best of our abilities, that we would find success.
You know, that's fantastic. And, you know, my parents always said, treat people like you want to be treated. And I think it sounds like that. With Piazza, what was I know one of the coaches had a question about, you know, trading a guy like Piazza, the behind the scenes there. What was that reason?
Well, that's been well documented. I won't belabor that. Reggie, again, was very much involved. But that trade, I got a phone call in 1998 from Bob Graziano, then the president of the Dodgers. He said, Fred, there's been a trade that's been made that needs to be announced tonight. And I had no awareness of this. The deal was basically made over the rights to the Florida Marlins television rights. Fox wanted to establish a regional network, and he told me that the trade needed to be announced. I said, well, Bob, there will be 2 announcements then, because after we announce the trade, I'll announce my resignation, because you don't need me, and this isn't the way that the Dodgers do business, believe me. And I went back to my desk, and Derek Hall called me and said, Freddie said the trade can't be announced tonight because Gary Sheffield has a no-trade contract. And I said, of course he has a no-trade contract. Everybody in baseball, general managers, knows that. I thought you had that issue had been resolved. So the trade couldn't be announced, and I wasn't going to leave the Dodgers in that lurch because we had to resolve the issue with Gary before the trade could be announced. And it was, I haven't made a big note of this publicly, but it struck me that one of the most unusual things that I've ever seen in my life is that Gary flew to Los Angeles to meet with me because we needed to resolve the no-trade contract to complete the deal. The Marlins were playing in St. Louis that night. Here's Gary Sheffield, a member of the Marlins, playing the Cardinals, walking into my office at Dodger Stadium when he hadn't yet been a Dodger. And I thought, how incredibly wrong is this? All of us involved in baseball know this. Every game, every inning, every pitch, every moment is of a critical importance. These aren't minor things in our game. One game, one play can determine the outcome of your season. I mean, it's just true. And but anyway, we got the trade. We resolved Gary's no trade contract, and Fox did not like the way that I handled the announcement, because when the announcement ultimately was made, I told the media and the fans exactly how it came about. Fox basically wanted me to say that I had made the trade, and I said, you guys got the wrong guy here. it's not as if I haven't made a bad trade. The record will reflect that. If you think I'm going to go before the public and the media and lie about it, no, that's not going to happen. So anyway, that kind of marked the end of my Dodger time. And in many ways, the saddest part, most difficult part, was how that affected then other people, including Mr. Smith and Mark Cressy and Glenn Gregson and others with the changes that were made. This was so un-Dodger-like, I couldn't even really put it in the context. I don't know what the hell it was, but it wasn't the Dodgers.
You know, and I'm so proud of you standing up like that because, you know, certainly from a smaller scale, I was an independent ball and making trades and trying to build a club. And we had things, and I think I'm glad that you talked about this because of the fact that there's things that happen behind the scenes that people are not aware of. It's not all that black and white. It's not that easy. So I'm certainly happy you brought that up. But here's the area that I'd also like to follow up with, and that is when you just said the part about every pitch, everything's important. Things are starting to change a little bit, and Major League Baseball is starting to look at umpires and now electronic strike zones. I'd love your opinion on that, what you think about that.
Well, I guess I'm probably maybe too much of a traditionalist, but when you start monkeying with the game with rule changes, and I know one thing being discussed, I don't even know where it is in the whole situation now, that a pitcher comes in and must face a required 3 hitters. I mean, what the hell's happening to our game here? I mean, you don't regulate the game in that fashion. That's totally changing the very basic nature of the game. So some of these things I'm just not in step with at all because I believe too much in the game and not just the history of the game, but the more important, the integrity of the game. Let's not be establishing rules or guidelines that's impacting the game itself. That may not sound clear to some, but it's you can make a lot of changes. And Peter, you referenced earlier about uniforms and how players dress, and I have my own feeling about that, but I don't consider that to be a major issue. What I consider to be the major issue is the integrity of the game. And in the words, the best summary is one of the people in the game that I respect the most, and that is Joey Amalfitano, whose words are respect the game, and respect the integrity of the game. And I think that's what's that's what's so important for all of us who have been a part of the game and who are in the game.
And folks, I'm going to get to your questions. There's some good questions here. Before we do, you know, one of the things yourself, Peter O'Malley, the organization, first of all, you helped the grassroots level a lot. College baseball, high school baseball, you were very heavily involved. You knew a lot of the coaches. But not only that, you also were in the forefront of international baseball and with the Olympics, helping get baseball back into the Olympics. I want to talk about the importance of that. Why it was so important to you, Mr. O'Malley, and the Dodgers?
Well, it's the start of that again, when you look at the history of the Dodger organization and you look at Walter O'Malley and his interest in growing the game on an international level. He was such a visionary and so far ahead of the game in terms of the vision of the game. And the trips the Dodgers were making, we're talking about going back into the 1960s into Japan, and then that legacy being carried over by Peter O'Malley and building a field in China, as those so many of you even on this call know. One of the great efforts was in 1984 when baseball became a demonstration sport. Bowie Kuhn was the commissioner Rod Dato very much involved, our dear friend Bob Smith very much involved. That had a major impact in growing the game. And when you think about this in terms of the steps and through the years that I simply came along and wanted to help with that philosophy and whatever that I could do to grow the game from an international level. But growing the game from an international level also represents another very important part. It represents the diversity of the game. And so that the whole international aspect, and I've been so fortunate with so many wonderful friendships and the involvement. And I know, Peter, the organization you're very much associated with the late Bill Arce, friend. And even after my Dodger days, I would have luncheons with Bill Arce and John Scalinas and Mike Riskus and Ben Hines and so many wonderful people, Art Nasmanian, because what happens in the game that doesn't get the recognition that it deserves are the people who help build the game from the amateur level, from the international level. You know, this is the foundation of our game, and it's going to hopefully continue to grow because it's so important for the game.
Absolutely. You know, Patrick from Switzerland wants to know, and it's a good question, with the great history of the Dodgers from Brooklyn to Jackie Robinson, how do you assure that the players today live up to the tremendous culture and respect the Dodger way? You know, I guess that you answered part of that earlier, but if you want to elaborate maybe on that.
I think we have to look a little bit to the past, and I use this quote quite often these days because the greatest honor I ever had as a Dodger was to be in the company of Jackie Robinson on 2 occasions when we retired his uniform number in 1972, and when I had the honor to be in his company at the World Series later that year when Commissioner Kuhn asked him to throw out the honorary first pitch. And he said, "I will if you give me an opportunity to speak." And Jackie's words, they're there on YouTube. Another place, Jackie acknowledged, baseball's made progress, but I will not be happy until I look over, I think his words, to the third base coaching box and see a black man, meaning diversity in our game. Jackie was to die 9 days later at the age of 52. So if we're looking, if anybody in the Dodgers wants to know what the Dodgers stand for, we better stand for and stand with the words of one of the most impactful people in our society, and that's Jackie. And his words, and I wanted them used on the trophy that we gave out, Celebration of Life Award, at the 2 celebrity golf tournaments we had for Benefit City Hope. A life is not important except on the impact it has on other lives. So all of you guys on this call, the coaches, when you think about baseball and the opportunity to use the sport that we love to impact other lives, to impact young people, to help them advance, to help them learn, to help them get an education. And at City of Hope, in this story, this book really weaves baseball and cancer. A fellow patient was a fellow by the name of Tom Quinley. I got out of the elevator one day, and this man was sitting there in a wheelchair with a friend of his, and he had on a baseball cap. And I looked at him, I could see, this is the coach. And I said, "What's the SH for?" And he said, South Hills High School. He says, "I'm the baseball coach at South Hills." And we struck up a friendship. And that high school coach, and it's part of the books, it's not the Fred story. You read about that book, and you read about this coach and the impact as a high school coach that he had on other lives, including a gentleman who happens to be a major league manager today, Chris Woodward of the Texas Rangers.
Yes.
Because he played for Coach Quinley, and he took the values the coach and impacting. So that's what we have. That's what we have to give. So far beyond our game is the lessons our game can teach others.
You know, Fred, a lot of coaches are always trying to get better, whether they're coaching or managing. And you were around one of the great ones, Tommy Lasorda, or any other coaches that you had in your system. What were some of the qualities that made these guys successful?
Well, we have been so blessed. We were blessed then, and I know the Dodgers have a great group of people working now. But it was that continuity, that dedication, that, again, teamwork. And I think about the great coaches, and when I came to the Dodgers and seeing the work of people like Red Adams and Monty Basgall, just wanting to be as good as we could be, and with a great passion and dedication for working together and teaching the game, and the foundation in the work beginning at Dodger Town, and the great Ranch Rickey, whose philosophy and work speaks for itself. But it's truly just the dedication of how we're going to do this job, and all the coaches and all the people that are involved here, and again in teaching baseball on an international level, and how do we get better, and just giving our fullest effort at all times to be as good as we can be, and to be passionate about the game and loving the game. And again, those things aren't unique to the Dodgers. It's just the magic of our wonderful game. And when you have success, celebrating that as a team, but caring for others, and wanting to give everything you have to the game.
You know, I'm going to take a question here. Interesting enough, one of the coaches asked the Dodgers, let's see, who was the Dodger player that did the most with the least amount of talent, and who were some of the top prospects that maybe didn't get there that should have?
Well, the most with the least amount of talent. I won't say it was absolutely the least amount of talent, but the player who maximized his talent as much as anyone was the great Maury Wills. Maury Wills you can look up the record, spent 8 years in the minor leagues. Learned to be a switch hitter through the work of the late Bobby Bragan. Did everything that he could with his the ability that he had, and obviously had the ability of speed. But Maury just continued to drive until he became one of the greats of the game, and a player in my mind who deserves and certainly should be in the Hall of Fame. Those who had the most talent and didn't get there, there are many of those. I think the greatest common denominator, when I think about players who maximize their ability, had that great dedication and desire to be better. And I look at our team, and Reggie was such a big part of this team. When you look at a period of time of Garvey, Lopes, Russell, Say, Reggie, Dusty. Well, you talk about a collection. First of all, you couldn't get those guys out of the lineup. Everyone wanted to play, and they wanted to play every day. Because if you look at those players, Ron Say, bless his heart, was not a player with great athletic ability. I think God acknowledged that. But you know something? When we used to have the winter workouts, Ron Say never missed a winter workout. I mean, Davey Lopes and Bill Russell and Steve Garvey made position changes to find themselves at a position where they could have the greatest success. There is when you look at the true greats of the game, there is something within them that is greater than their skills. Because there were a lot of players of great skills. Because you know, in our game, and again I keep referencing because they're such a big part of it. Guy and Reggie, or who saw players. I mean, you have this young player who comes out of high school or comes out of college and the great prospect, and maybe does well in rookie ball and A ball, and then Double A becomes a kind of a defining spot, because the higher you get, the tougher the competition is. And what's going to separate you as much as anything is not your physical ability, but your mental approach to this. To say, I can do this. I can work my way through this. And mental toughness, that the most underrated part of a scouting report is makeup, character. Makeup and character are two of the most important ingredients in the judgment of a player. And probably in some of my mistakes was rating talent over makeup. Because if you don't have the makeup, you're never going to, I don't think you're ever really going to achieve greatness unless you're driving yourself to be great.
You know what? Well said. Love it. We've got about 10 more minutes left, folks. So if you got any questions, ask them. I guess this is from a rookie, or from a person not really in the industry in this area now. But I've always wondered, you look at the teams nowadays and you see the Dodgers payroll, you see the Cubs payroll, and a lot of these high payrolls. And then you look at the Rays, the Brewers, and I'll say even the Astros, when they won the World Series, they were like 15th in the payroll. And I always wondered, if I'm an owner and I'm looking at some of these clubs that are Oakland, you know, that are winning, always in the playoffs. Maybe they didn't win the big game, the World Series, but they're always consistently up there. And I'm spending $80 million or $90 million. Then I look at the Dodgers that are spending 200 and some million. I'm wondering, you know, do I need to make a change here? Do I need to look at what the Rays are doing and how they're doing it and spending less money? Where am I going wrong with that?
Well, I think you're always evaluating. As a general manager, you're always given a budget. But the Dodgers, in the years that I was there, Reggie was there, Guy was there, because of the ownership, our goal was to win. Our goal was to win. And yes, we had, in certain periods of time, we had budgets that you could make a case. I never did, because I didn't think it was justified, that we didn't have all that we would like to have to work with. You never do. But when we were fortunate to have a mindset, I can't ever recall a year in 30 years when the philosophy wasn't, we're going to try to win the World Series. We failed often. We failed often. Because you can narrow it down to 81-80 when you talk about winning, because you don't really win in baseball unless you've won the World Championship. you have a good season, wonderful, great memories of that season, great accomplishments in that season. But the goal is to win, and that's the right goal to have. And some teams, make the judgments of what it is they're faced with and how they're going to build and what they're going to do. That's kind of just the dynamics of the game. And I don't second guess, I don't question any of that. I just know what our objective was.
If Fred Claire was a general manager nowadays, would you have to make some adjustments? And what would they be if you had to make those? What would those be?
I don't really. I would do it under the philosophy that I had with 30 years with the Dodgers. I think that in management, what's really important, maybe I've said this before, is the relationship you have with the players. And I wouldn't change that philosophy at all because nothing has changed there. As Reggie knows that every day as a general manager, I would go down to the clubhouse. I would walk through that clubhouse. I would go out to the batting cage. I didn't do that to be seen or be heard. I did that for one reason. If you, as a player or as a coach, have something to say to me, here I am, say it. Let's resolve any issue that we have. Building, it gets back to the negotiations of today. Building the trust with the players is the most important part of it. And also, this is never has been, never should be about the general manager or any other position. This is tritely but truly the teamwork. And that's why when you have success, you celebrate as a team, and that's the greatest joy of it. And it is there forever.
Patrick asks, with the different teams having different ability to spend money, TV revenue, and all that, one would a salary cap, in independent ball, which is a real, a smaller level, we had a salary cap. There are always ways around the salary cap, but would salary cap help? And two, your thoughts on the minor leagues now, where they're going to start cutting possibly teams. Those two areas. Your thoughts on those two?
Two quick answers. Salary cap, I don't think will ever exist. The Players Association is totally opposed to that, and I don't think that it takes different forms, but I don't think we'll see a salary cap per se. I just know that there's enough total revenue that we need to figure out a partnership. What's happening at the minor league level is one of the most disappointing things I have ever seen in my lifetime. Minor league baseball is the lifeblood of baseball. And I don't know how some of this is coming about, whether it's a part of the analytics that they look at things and trying to save money. I'm not talking about saving money. I'm talking about saving the game. The loss of minor league teams makes no sense to me. The limitation of the draft makes no sense to me. I probably would not be a good guy to have in baseball.
I agree.
Because there is so much that I wouldn't agree with. That they would get so tired of hearing from me that they would have me out of there in about 10 minutes. Because are you kidding me in terms of the growth of our game? Do you understand how this game was grown? This game wasn't grown by analytics. This game wasn't grown by dollars. This game was grown by the passion and the love and independent baseball and minor league baseball and the total involvement of all who want to contribute to the game. That's how the game is growing. That's how the game has gotten to the revenue position that it has today.
Well said. And I'll tell you what, I'm hoping I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but if it does, I'm hoping, being an independent ball for 10 years, I'm hoping they step up, because that could be a replacement for a lot of these players to continue their career and to continue to be watched. So that's one hope. But I want to get a question from my friend in Mexico, and he wanted to ask about Fernando Valenzuela, what you thought why he was so successful, what you saw in him.
Fernando, I remember his first start. I remember the background. Jerry Royce pulls a hamstring running in a workout the day before opening day. We call Fernando and tell him he's going to have the starting spot opening day. Get your rest. It happened on that day after Fernando walked up, came through the back stages of the stadium, into the dugout, about to start his first major league game. I could see it. I could feel it. He stretched his neck, full house at Dodger Stadium. There was a calm that came from that man that you don't often see. It was as if I prepared all my life for this opportunity. And there's the stage. And he walked out onto that stage knowing that he had done the work, knowing that he had the ability, and the rest is history. So what he meant to baseball and to his country and to all of us was remarkable, because he had prepared, and just a decade or two later with Hideo, it was somewhat similar in terms of a player coming onto the major league stage, but being ready to prove what he could do. And that whole aspect brings us into the whole value and importance of baseball on an international level.
And Fred, finally, and unless anybody has any other questions, I'd love to end it with, kind of your last minute thoughts of, like you said, international baseball, but also the grassroots level, the coaches that are working at the grassroots level. We have coaches from different parts of the world working at all different levels, how important their responsibilities are. Talk to them a little bit about where you would like to see the game going, especially at the grassroots level.
Well, I would like to see as much support as possible through the major league office and through the federations. Give the financial support and the total support of what's needed to continue to grow our game, because we have the people there who are passionate, who are deserving, and because of what the game can mean, as I've spoken about, as far as how it can impact young lives. And so I'm so appreciative of the work that's being done by the coaches and doing everything that they can, because the game has so much to offer in terms of not just the growth of baseball, but we know the limitation as far as the advancement into a professional area, but what the game can teach us, and what those who are on the call who are teachers, what they can give. So I encourage everyone, and I know how difficult it can be at times, and having been involved with different areas of international baseball, but don't give up your drive, and don't give up your hopes for the future, because it's so critically important for all of us to continue to grow the game and the work that you do. So much appreciated.
And I apologize. There was an area I wanted to mention, because you've helped a lot. You've been a mentor to Ryan Flynn in New Zealand. Both Reggie and I were in New Zealand. There's a lot of good talent out there. There's going to be more talent coming. They're doing a great job. Let's finish it off with that part, because I think they deserve some recognition here, what they've been doing baseball in New Zealand.
Well, Ryan Flynn, as a young man, reached out to me, had an interest in baseball, wanted to be involved in baseball, and I responded to him, and the opportunity came to him in New Zealand. The work that he did there was absolutely tremendous because of his dedication and his passion and many hurdles that he had to overcome. And the blessing that I have is to be associated with people like Reggie and Ron Renicky and others who made the trip to New Zealand to help grow that game, just as I'd had the opportunity years early on a trip to Australia, and to be able to call upon Red Adams and Monty Basgall and others to go to Australia to grow the game. And that needs to just continue, because the impact that you can make through that work is so meaningful. So I again, and I know the work that's done in all of the countries that are striving so hard and competing with other sports, but our sport is baseball. And so for whatever advice that or ever help that I can be, or if anybody on this call, here my email is fclair@sbcglobal.net. I'm always willing to try to help to grow our game, and we'll do that for as long as I possibly can.
All right. And folks, listen, before you go, I'm going to do a quick closing. When we close, we're still, if you want to stay on for a minute, just to say hi and goodbye and all that, but I'm going to do a quick close. So hang tight. We will send Fred's email to you. I follow up every time to all our listeners that are on Zoom with emails of the guests. So first of all, special thanks to Fred Clair. Fred, thanks so much for doing this. What a great role model you are for everybody in the game. So thanks again for helping, helping the coaches.
You're most welcome.
All right. And thanks also Reggie Smith, and everybody knows Reggie travels all over the world helping coaches. Want to thank him also. ISG, Bill RC started it. Our group, ISG Baseball. You can go to isgbaseball.com. Special thanks to our producer, Brian Kroc, with the Lightning Media Group. And also, obviously, Mr. Fred Clair, along with everybody in the U.S. and around the world that was on Zoom, Twitter, or Facebook. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo. This is the show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds that love the challenge of status quo. Can't thank you enough, everybody, for being on the show. We'll be back on the show Monday with Gus Rodriguez, umpire, WBSC, top director, umpires. We'll go over umpiring rules. We'll go over rules and also working with coaches. And we'll have a lot of great stuff on the show on Monday. So again, that'll be 1 o'clock East Central Time. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you on the next show.
See everybody. See Pete.